Have you ever felt yourself longing to be more creative? Thought about writing a book, or maybe painting, starting a side hustle, or taking up a musical instrument, but you're always too busy or never seem to have the time? You're not alone, but it is possible to tap back into your creative side. And maybe you might just find that following that little spark of creativity takes you on an unexpected path, perhaps even to living the life you've always actually wanted. Well, here we are again. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Property Management Podcast. Now, I want to share a little gratitude right now and say thank you to you. Thank you for listening and joining me on this journey. Everything I share and talk about on this podcast is part of the growth journey that I've been on. And now I want to share what I've learnt, and I'm still learning because it never actually ends, with you. So if you are enjoying listening and learning, and you know someone else who needs to hear some of this content, would you mind sharing this episode or podcast with them? Now, this is kind of a cool episode. It's something a little bit different. Now, when you think of property management, you don't really think of creativity, do you? But just because you are a property manager and you're probably highly structured and organised with great attention to detail, all the things that I am not, which is why I struggled day to day as a property manager, that doesn't mean you still don't have a creative streak or side to you. You see, we aren't just one thing. A mother, a business owner, a BDM. Often we wear those hats and many more. And there are no rules around who we can and can't be. We can be a motorbike rider, a surfer, a florist, a fashion designer. We never have to stay locked into the one identity. Heck, I've been a barmaid, a corporate marketer, a sports journalist, a property manager, a business founder, a coach, a digital marketer, and who knows what next. I've still got another half a century of living to go, fingers crossed. So if you're wondering, but how do I know what else I might want to do or try? Well, start by thinking back to when you were a kid. What did you really love to do or be back then? What got you excited? What were you passionate about? For me, it was reading, writing, and acting. I loved writing a little play and then acting it out for my family. I even started charging kids in the neighbourhood 2 cents. Yep, you heard me right, a whopping 2 cents to come and watch me perform a self-written play. Usually my dolls and toys were the other characters. But that was what I loved to do. And even throughout high school, I wrote the end-of-year plays. I absolutely loved it. Somehow, though, life took a different turn and I ended up far, far away from my original dreams. Not that I have any regrets, because I do believe that everything happens for a reason. Now, my guest in this episode is Jess Spencer, and I met Jess at a business retreat I went to. She has an amazing story to share. She's a mum of 3 little kids who found her creative side and left her 9-to-5 corporate banking job to become a children's author and create amazing children's products. It hasn't been easy. The fear has been massive and the pivots many, but she wouldn't change a thing. Stepping back into her creative self was the best thing she could have ever done. She's a better mother, wife, person, and is now making more money than she ever thought possible, doing something she absolutely loves. Making a profitable business from your passion doesn't happen for everyone. But I think the lesson here is to at least give yourself some time to tap back into the things that you love and that actually lights you up. So take a listen to my chat with Jess. Thank you for joining me on the Property Management Podcast. Now, before we dive in, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started as a children's author and creative?
So my name is Jessica Spencer. My business is Adored Illustrations, and I got started with my business when my daughter was 4, and she was obsessed with all things magical, whimsical, fairies, mermaids, and I couldn't find a book out there that sort of had everything that she wanted. I've always been interested in writing, and I just had this idea. I was like, oh, I'll just make it myself. How hard can it be? And so, yeah, it just, the book just snowballed from there. What I started off as this very simple idea that I was just going to make her a book just really snowballed, because me being me, I'm quite a perfectionist and it had to be a certain way. And so that's how I started. It was honestly just an idea for a book for my daughter.
And you were working in a bank before that, though, weren't you? So
yes, yeah.
So was your daughter kind of the inspiration to tap back into that creative side of yourself?
Yeah. So I was working at one of the big 4 banks in their commercial property team. And I was working part-time. I had Ayla, who was 4 at the time, and Will, who was 2, or not even quite 2, I don't think. And I think I'd gotten to the point where I'm a person who gets easily bored, and the 3 days at work was great, but I sort of was bored at nighttime, and I was bored a little bit when Will slept during the day, and I was like, oh, what else can I do? And so, yeah, it sort of all came together that I was like, oh, well, I'll just make this book for Ayla. But yeah, I was working part-time when I started the book, and that was not easy, but I didn't really, when I first started it, anticipate that it would obviously grow to what it grew to. So yeah.
So what are some of the other products that you have inside the business now? So what's it grown to? What's that snowball, that one little creative idea to make a book for your daughter has now snowballed into this big business, really?
Yeah. So I now have 6 books. So I have 3 ABC books, 3 1, 2, 3 books. I have flashcards, I have puzzles, I have memory cards. I've just launched a baby journal and milestone cards, and I have another book series coming out at the end of the year. And so when I launched the Enchanting ABC, which was my first book, which was the book for Ayla, which ended up costing 5 times the amount that I told my husband it was going to cost. So I was very nervous when I launched it, but I had been quite big on Instagram, and that was where I was getting ideas from. And I'd brought a few things for the decor for Ayla's room, and that's where I'd found my artists for my book, was through Instagram. And so I sort of was like, well, hopefully I'll be able to sell some of these copies through Instagram. So I sort of started up a little business to hopefully offset some of the money that I had spent on creating this book. And when I launched the Enchanting ABC, I sold, I think it was 400 copies in the first weekend, so 3 days. And it was just, I actually shut my website down because I couldn't keep up with packing books. And then obviously that gave me back the money to reinvest into another book. And I thought, well, I've made a book for my daughter, I need to make one for my son, or he's going to grow up with a complex. So I made The Incredible ABC as the next book for my son. And then again, that sold really well. And I kept being able to reinvest that money, because I was working part-time as well, back into the business to, I guess, scale it and grow it quite quickly. And then, I was able to leave my corporate job, I think 18 months into starting the business. And then I've just focused on the business ever since.
So what were some of the fears then around, you've got 3 kids now, so you've got to write, you've got the 3rd book now, but what were some of the fears around leaving your corporate job? And I guess what were some of the stories that people told you that, you're crazy, or, was that sort of the feedback you were getting?
It was one of those hard things. I'd hired a business coach at the time, and when we first started working together, the first thing they said to me was, what's your goal? Where do you want to be in a few years' time? I said, well, I don't want to be working at bank. I don't want to be working there anymore. And so she said, well, let's work out how to get you there. And so we worked really hard. I'd had when I started, I had no email campaign. I had no sign up list. I had nothing. And so they sort of started me in all those things. That they started me on Facebook ads. And so we sort of, the revenue after I started working with them was quite got, obviously higher and higher as I invested more and more money back into the business. But I was really nervous about leaving my job, but at the same time I had just gotten myself to a point where I was so stressed every single day trying to go to my corporate job, deal with my 2 kids at home, and run this business. So it was like I was nervous, but there was also a sense of relief when I finally did it, because I was just like, I have been running on empty for so long that I just needed to do it. And one of the good things was the team that I worked in was very supportive, and they did say to me, they said, if it doesn't work out, like, come back, you're welcome back. So that was really nice I guess I sort of knew that I had I could go back if I needed to. But even beyond that, I knew that the skills that I had in finance and accounting were pretty transferable. I sort of knew that if this book thing didn't work out, that I could find another job. So I wasn't super, I guess, financially stressed. It was more just how, like, going from having this full-time job, a little part-time job where you know what you're doing every single day, to like trying to run your business and grow it. It's such a huge change. So yeah,
I think many of my audience will be able to relate perfectly to you saying that you're running on empty. This industry in property management and real estate, it's home to lots of high stress and burnout. And a lot of my audience as well is working mums. So, it is, and they still wear the burden of doing most of the home work as well. So yeah, they will totally relate to that. Now, I think one of the lessons I'm taking away from what you're saying, though, is that we don't have to just be one thing. Like, we don't have to just be, in a corporate job. We don't have to just be a working mum or a stay-at-home mum, or a business owner, or have a career. We can wear lots of different hats. But do you think it's fear that stops us from getting out of our comfort zone and trying these new things? Because it's pretty uncomfortable when you take a risk sometimes. What if you fail? What if no one likes what I'm doing? And I'll give you an example in my life. I wanted to write a fiction book, and for years and years and years I've put it off, and I'm finally doing it now. But I dealt with imposter syndrome and limiting self-beliefs. They all held me back. Can you relate to that as well?
I think that's one of the things that over the last few years, I have had so many messages from other mums who say, oh, I would love to do what you're doing. Even when I actually left my corporate job, I had one of the male staff say to me, he had written a children's book, and he hadn't done it in the same way that I'd done it, to sort of, start a bit of a business. And I obviously was very calculated in how I did mine and how I created it and the overall product. But he said to me, you're living my dream job. Like, I would love to just be able to work, like, to write books. And it's always, the amount of mums that message me, and it might not be writing books, it might be something else creative, it might be sewing, it might be hand making jewelry, whatever it is. For me, I was just, I think, sort of not trained, but I didn't really see being a creative as a way to make money. Like, when I was younger, it was very much, you needed to sort of follow certain career paths, or go to university, or go do the jobs that made sense, and you knew the outcome, you knew the money you were getting paid each fortnight. And creativity, like being creative, just it didn't even occur to me that I could make money from writing. And I think that's what, especially with my daughters, I really, and my son, really want to instill, is that it doesn't, you need to always be using your brain and doing something to further your education, but it doesn't have to be you have to work in a bank, or you have to be a nurse, or you have to be a teacher. Like, there are so many things that we can do nowadays. And I feel so much for the women who message me, because I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be stuck and not necessarily have the money to leave a job. And all the time, like, if you've got little kids, I do have a third child now, but Miller is 2. So I had long left my corporate job when I had Miller, but I can't imagine how I would have done it all with 3 little kids either. And I think for me, the biggest thing is, I just, same as you, Kylie, I've been writing like a novel as well. And I just always did a little bit in the background for me. I just always had something in the background for me to try and offset, I guess, that corporate lifestyle to the creative one that I wanted to lead. So I think that's what I would just encourage anyone to do, is if you feel like you're blocked into some sort of career that you don't think is your passion, or where you want to go to, is to find little small ways to work on your passion each day. No matter if it's create a Pinterest board of something you want to create, or write books, or look at illustrations, whatever it might be, to just give yourself something so you feel like there is, that you do have something, that creative outlet, even if it's only small.
And I think you're living proof, and there's lots of other living proof of people who do start their creative side hustles or their creative passions, and then they do turn into rewarding and fulfilling careers that do pay you bills. Now, do you have some practical advice for someone wanting to maybe tap back into their own creative side? Like, how did you find your creativity again? I know you did touch on it a little bit through your daughter, but you said you were still writing even before that. So how do you get back into that space when you are so busy with kids and life in general?
Honestly, for me, it has just been like forcing myself to make the time. So when I first started out with this book idea, and while I was still working at ANZ, so when I'd launched the first couple of books, and I was still, I still had all these ideas of what else I wanted to do, I would often go on runs, and that running time, it was half an hour, but I would just run and just think of all the ideas and all the books I could create and what the names would be, and how all the different things I could do. And it doesn't sound like much, and but any small amount of time that you can think or work on your creative idea, even if it's just on a walk with your child in a pram, just go through in your head all the things you can do, all the things that you can see, books you want to write, or illustrations you can see in a book, or jewelry you want to make, whatever it might be, but you have to make the time. That's the thing. And I think people do forget, and we do have this culture of we're just all so busy, and we can't possibly fit in anything else. But at the end of the day, we all have the same amount of hours in the day, and some of us seem to be able to build on these ideas and progress them, and others can't. And I truly believe it is you just force the time, because believe me, I had no time when it started. Like, once I was working and I had my 2 kids and I was running this business, there was no time, but I still forced myself to work on the business. I would get up at 5 o'clock many mornings and work while my kids slept. But I am a very motivated person. But I think if you want it enough, you will find the time and creativity. It can be journaling. It is just finding half an hour in your day, whether it's first thing in the morning, last thing at night, while the baby sleeps, while your kids are watching a movie, whatever. Like, I do believe we all have half an hour in our day to focus on some sort of time for ourselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I used time as an excuse for many years, and I would get up. I wrote the first draft of my book last year by getting up at 4:30 and writing for an hour or two every morning. I did have to sacrifice my gym time, which but that's okay. That was my priority. My goal was to write that first draft of my book. So you've just got to find the time, and an extra half an hour here, have a half an hour lunch break, or whatever you're going to do.
I'm very guilty of that as well. Writing like my own novel at the moment is 100% been on the back burner, because I am so busy with my business and my 3 kids, and I know I'm making the excuse, but I know it, and so I also know that I'm not going to get this book finished until I stop making the excuses. And it's what you're happy to live with. If you're happy to live with the excuses and never, I guess, progress your idea or it not go further, then that's totally fine. Like, being a business owner and all of this, it's honestly not for everyone. But if you do have that sort of goal to one day work for yourself, or one day, make money from your creative ideas, then you do have to find the time to, put your energy into it.
Well, speaking of time, you just said before we jumped in that you've actually got another little business a business that you're starting, and that is helping people create and start creative businesses. Tell me a little bit about that.
So by the time this podcast goes live, it will have been launched, so I can talk about it. So the coaching program is called Create and Soar, and basically it's just an hour of my time with whoever would like to chat with me about their creative idea. It doesn't have to be self-publishing children's books, but obviously if you have an idea to self-publish a children's book, I'm going to be able to give you supplier options, give you cost options, give you tell you whether I've had a couple of calls already, and the ideas that these girls have are wonderful. But it's also it's also about creating a business. It's not just about being creative, it's about having a business that makes money from your creative idea. And I think I have found a lot of creatives don't necessarily have that business background or don't necessarily think about the money side of it the way that they should when they first start out. They think it's a great idea and they just want to get their book or their product out there. But I'm a firm believer in actually knowing your numbers before you start anything, because I've seen so many businesses and so many small businesses shut down in the last couple of years because they're not making money, because I don't think they've known how to start that concept properly at the beginning. So it's a coaching program for people who are creative and want to create their own products, or if they have products that maybe and their business maybe isn't where they want it to be, I can give them advice, I guess, on how to scale it, because that's definitely something I've done. I mean, the people listening aren't going to be able to see this, but this is my office. So these are all my products here. So when I first started, I would have never dreamt that I have my own office full of my own products that I can see. And, I'll pack this afternoon. I have like a lot of orders come in over the last couple of days. So I've got to make time to pack those orders. I also have someone who helps me pack. But yeah, it is honestly insane. If you have that drive and you have that determination and you have that creativity, what you can actually accomplish.
Now, that is amazing. Good on you. That is so inspiring. Now, tell me, I love personal development. Can you share a tool, resource, book, podcast, or something that will help our listeners?
So for me, Get Rich, Lucky Bitch by Denise Duffield is a favorite of mine. I think along with being a business owner, so much of your time is focused, or should be focused, on your money and how much you're bringing in and all of that. And this book really helped me identify that, the ways, and I guess I had maybe some money blocks, or the way I was thinking about money, and that, at the end of the day, there's heaps of money out there. There's enough money out there for everybody to make a lot of money. And I really highly recommend that if you feel like you've got a bit of an issue with money, or you feel like you want to make more money and don't know how to, this book really it's a mindset book. And I loved it. I reread it. So I loved that book. And I think I've forgotten what it's called, but Samantha Wills, she's a creative, she's a designer of Golden Dust, I think is her memoir, is just a brilliant read for anybody who's a creative who wants to read about another person's journey. She's a jewelry designer and she built a huge business. Just a creative's journey in the actual business world. She didn't know a lot about business at the beginning either. So yeah, those are my two favorite books.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So how can our audience connect further with you?
So Adored Illustrations is my Instagram handle. It's the same on Facebook. My website is www.adoredillustrations.com.au. Obviously, if you do love our products, please sign up to the email list, because each month I do send out special emails with special discounts only for my email subscribers. I'm very big on giving back to the community that I have built, because I would not be in the position that I am in today without so many amazing customers loving my products, recommending them, buying them for, children, grandchildren. I feel very, I don't like to use the word lucky, because, I don't think I've been lucky to get where I am, but I do feel grateful for the people that have supported me and all of my customers. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jess. I will share all of that info in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I am so grateful to have had this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kylie.